So I'm not going to use the word enlightenment because it's a silly word. It makes a thing that's much more like a verb seem like a noun and an ending and a place. So we'll call it awakeness. And my experience is awakeness came as a moment and a feeling profound experience of emptiness. And I was opening a drawer and I looked down and I didn't quite think, but I had the feeling, whose hand is this? It just didn't seem like my hand. Because there wasn't a me. And it was profoundly quiet. And I wandered outside, just struck by the beauty of the world. And seeing it in this way that I had never seen it before, or that I had forgotten. I was about 9 months sober at that time. The whole experience lasted probably for a couple minutes. And kind of off in the distance, I could hear some thoughts, some my mind, and it got closer and closer, and I think went back into it. And the experience was so profound that it completely altered the trajectory of my life for years and years and years and years afterwards, and to this day. So there's some things about awakeness that we could say are foundational. One is that awakeness wants to be awake, wants to be free, just wants to experience life in an awake way. And so what gets in the way of that is everything we hold on to in with our minds, with our feelings, all our judgments about life, how it should be, how we are, and everything we've been avoiding. And one of the things that we don't always enjoy about this process is to that end, to the end of awakeness wanting to be awake, it comes back for everything and anything that we hold on to. And the process can be pretty disturbing because, of course, these are the things that we've been avoiding. And now we've had a taste of heaven, if you will. And it's like, I just want to be there. I don't want to deal with all this stuff I've been avoiding. And yet, it is everything that we've been avoiding. Everything we don't want to be conscious of, which keeps coming up and keeps seemingly removing us from that experience of lightness, awakeness, spaciousness. And so the process is quite simple in one sense. Everything will keep coming up until we can be conscious of it. And what I mean by conscious, right, is aware of, but not in resistance to, and not indulging in. So when that thing, that thought, that feeling, that thought feeling, because they're always tied together. comes up, it comes up because it wants to be seen, wants to pass through our experience, our body, our system. And meditation is one of the ways we can do this, engage in this process of things coming up, being seen, falling away. It's one of the ways. And not without its shortcomings. For me, meditation was we'll say my primary practice for the 10 years following that first awakening experience. And I would say it was primarily a mental exercise for me. And therefore lacked a lot of power and depth to really dissolve the material that was coming up. So what I mean by that is because of how I'd been conditioned by life, by my family, etc., and how mostly how I'd conditioned myself. I did not have a lot of connection to my feelings and to my heart. And so when thoughts would arise, I would see them, and I could stay conscious with them. And they'd pass. And they might resurface 100 times, 1,000 times, 5,000 times. And maybe eventually dissolve. But it was a slow process, because I didn't have a great understanding of how these things are all tied together. So thoughts and feelings are related. Let's say we are presented with a choice, and the choice is between vanilla ice cream and mint chocolate chip, two of my faves. And I can choose one, but I'm only going to get one, right? The other one is no longer an option once I make that choice. And I'm not going to feel much about this choice. It's going to be a preference, maybe depending in that moment. I'm not going to be devastated when, with the road not taken there. And it's not going to keep me up at night. And that's because there's not a lot of feeling there, right? There's no sort of deep emotional depths about that thing for me. About that choice. Whereas the material that comes up that blocks us from awakeness and a real sense of freedom always comes with an emotional component. So it's thoughts combined with emotions. And they tend to create beliefs. And so even though I could see some material arise in my consciousness, and It would arise, I'd see it, it would pass. Because I wasn't really seeing it and feeling it to its depth, it would arise many, 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 many times. The emotional underpinnings of beliefs, belief systems, that's where the power is. That's where the depth is. If one were to think about it just in terms of something like energy, the amount of energy in a thought, just let's just talk about it on a dumb physical level. The amount of energy required to have a thought, quite minimal. The amount of energy required in crying for 20 minutes, sobbing, yelling, shaking with fear. So, the whole body shaking, pushing water out of the eyes to your decks, right? That's a big expenditure of energy. Could be worth 1,000,000 thoughts. And so it's this process of learning to stay with what arises in a heartful way. That really made a big, big difference. It really allowed a lot of material to come up, move through quickly. And quickly is basically all we can do here, right? Everyone's on this journey. The journey towards greater awareness, awakeness. It's really only the speed that it happens that sometimes we have any control over. And if you're a human being that has had a taste of heaven, you will understand that anything less than that kind of freedom will feel like hell after that. And it is. But it feels like shit. Because before, we didn't know anything better. And after we know that there is something so much better, so different. It's like the difference between night and day. So how to become more heartful. If that is actually, let's do the easy one first. So maybe you've got great access to your heart, and you love to meditate. Great, go for it. My only advice would be and maybe you don't have this hang up, but my advice would be meditation is not about sitting in some beautiful, clear space. Beautiful, clear space may happen. Meditation is not about being perfectly still. When that fear arises, let yourself shake. Sitting tends to kind of restrict and block that fear a little bit. If it's helpful, maybe you sit with your eyes closed, stand up, keep your eyes closed, and allow that fear to shake your whole body. If it's sadness that comes up, have a good, long, beautiful cry, as long as it takes. If it's anger, punch a pillow. Smack a whole bunch of pillows with a tennis racket. This is meditation too. And it's more valuable than staying on that cushion, probably. So expand the definition of what meditation can be. Because my definition was small. It's just energy that wants to move through. wants to pass through the space of you. Now for the rest of you. Oh, my brothers and sisters. All of us who did not learn how to feel our feelings. For whatever reasons. Certainly, we live in a culture. We we may not be quite as austere with our feelings as the Japanese, but we certainly, culture and life have a tendency to teach us to repress our feelings. And when it can't be expressed, when feelings can't be expressed with ease and pass through us with ease, tends to show up as a lot of thinking, a very active mind. And it's that old idea, there is no such thing as successful repression. So it's going to show up somewhere. So this process for me, some of you will laugh. This process for me started sitting in circle with other men. A good number of them were probably having a similar experience. We would always start a circle by checking in, which was something like, my name is, and I feel, and because we were guys, and because our vocabulary for these things was not huge, we tended to use 5 feelings when checking in. And the feelings are anger, sadness, fear, shame, joy, anger, sadness, fear, shame, joy. My name is Jason. I feel. Now, the trick with this is I didn't know what the fuck I was feeling most of the time. And turns out that experience is not uncommon, especially for guys, to have literally no clue what we're feeling. Because nobody's ever asked us before. Never had I gone to a friend and said, "Oh, hey, how you feeling?" And expected them to answer truthfully about what they were feeling. So, so this was a learning process. Learning to associate and become aware of sensations in my body, which requires paying attention to my body. And to do some categorization, lump these things into, give them words to describe them. And my ability to do this, even now, might appear somewhat laughable. Learning for myself that sadness was a kind of achy feeling, near my heart. And anger, sometimes a little more clear. And yet, I'd done a lot of repression of anger as well on my spiritual journey, and so not always obvious to me. It tended to show up as a lot of thinking about someone, some situation, as opposed to really feeling it. Fear. Kind of fight, flight. For me, mostly flight, mostly turtle up. And in its purest form, fear often feels like shaking, coldness in my limbs, my hands, fingers, arms, legs. Also a tricky one. One of the trickier ones, because there tends to be a lot of repression of fear. And therefore it's hard to really look at sometimes and really feel deeply. Much easier for me to go into story, go into thoughts about it. Literally, having to learn about what to call, joy. And yeah, like how to choosing for myself to include maybe a feeling of quiet spaciousness as a feeling of joy. Ooh, I forget, did I bring up shame? Maybe I only listed 4. Sadness, fear, anger, joy, shame. Yeah. Shame, difficult one. Very squirmy feeling. Doesn't want to be felt. Doesn't want to be looked at directly. Experienced. Tends to be repressed. So not a great job of necessarily explaining how these things feel in my body, except that I've come to recognize them in myself. A lot more than I used to. And they move through a lot more quickly. And how did I do that? I did that by sitting in these circles and having to check in and having to wrestle with this like question of, what am I feeling? What am I going to tell these people that I'm feeling? So practice, in other words. Many, many, many months of practice. And then as I learned to feel these feelings, strengthening that connection. Oh, this is how that feels. This is that feeling. There it is again. There it is. So maybe you're thinking to yourself, this guy's an idiot. And that seems like a valid point of view. And yet I think we all wrestle. I think it's a very common experience. I've met very well-adjusted people, successful, got life, seemingly down, and who have a really hard time with experiencing their own feelings. We can all probably think of these kind of examples in our own lives. So how to practice? I think there's probably some exercises out there. So one example of an exercise would be to sit, meditation, and put your attention on your heart. On that area of your body. Breathe through from that area gently. It's one way to start to open the feeling center, let that come to life a little bit. Could be a diary kind of exercise. What am I feeling in the morning when I wake up? What am I feeling in the middle of the day? What am I feeling in the evening? And maybe you mess up. Maybe you mess up sometimes. It's like, as soon as you write it down, as soon as you say it out loud, there's a little feeling sense of, that wasn't quite true. And personally, big fan of Harry Potter, right? And there's a beautiful moment when Hermione is explaining to Harry and Ron how Cho Chang, what she's experiencing. She's trying to, explain her state of being, her actions to them, and she's like, well, she's feeling sad about this, and she's also feeling fear about this. She might get kicked off the team, and she's very confused about her feelings for Harry because she's got them, and she also had feelings for this other guy, Cedric, but he's dead now. And at some point, Ron goes, one person can't feel all those things. They'd explode. And yeah, so if you haven't had the joyful experience of checking in at some point in your life with all 5 feelings all at the same time, just wait. It's a beautiful thing. As we would say in 12 steps, we'd say, keep coming back, don't stop till the miracle happens. One's emotional range, ability to differentiate between feelings can increase. These things can be learned at 32, at 40, at 50, at 60, and beyond. And it's a vital part of awakeness and waking up. Nobody gets to bypass this step. Not much of a feeler? It's fine. And all roads lead to Rome. Sooner or later, life will take care of that for you. Or, you can start now. And I think that's a good taste for today.